Innovation is truly at the heart of the defense industrial base. But if you're a DoD-focused startup, how can you launch and catapult into a complicated industry like defense contracting? Well, we talked to Mike Bynum with FedTech, an innovation accelerator that brings fresh ideas to the DoD to get his perspective on how tech and entrepreneurialism really meet DoD.
So Mike Bynum, I'm a principal at FedTech, and what we do at FedTech is work in deep technology with both startups and also federal labs, where we work on transitioning technology out of the labs into the hands of startup founders. So yeah, that's kind of the 30,000 foot view of what we do.
So FedTech's been taking a pretty big role lately in facilitating discussions with defense leaders and prime contractors. I remember when FedTech started back in 2015, it was like the new cool hot thing off the block.
Right.
In your own words, what is FedTech bringing? How is FedTech bringing innovation to the defense industry?
So I will say, it's like a stream, and we're going up and down the stream. So let's talk about bringing tech or innovation to the defense industry. That would be a part of what we call our accelerators business unit, where they're working with organizations like the U.S. Army or other organizations that are actually out there looking for solutions. So we've managed the X-Tech Search program for quite some time now. We've also managed the Army Applied Cyber program as well. So, these are programs where it's already built into, say, the Army with what they're trying to do, which is outreach to the entrepreneurial community, and we are basically just facilitating it. On the flip side, we're also taking innovation out of defense and taking it into the entrepreneurial community. So we have a business unit called Startup Studios, where we work with federal labs. We do the assessment of their IP to figure out, hey, what can be commercialized? And while we are doing that, we are also inviting people from what I would call civilians back in my military day, but the citizenry of the United States can participate because by law they are able to license these technologies, and not an individual but a company actually. So we actually take it in both directions, innovation into defense, but also innovation within defense, and bring it out into the community.
That's a serious feat to really undertake, trying to merge the best of commercial venture capital and government contracting. I mean, venture's traditionally known to be a little bit faster, maybe a little more agile than government contracting, which is maybe considered anything but. How would you say, FedTech is really changing the federal acquisition landscape?
Well, I won't go as far as say as we are changing the landscape. I think the landscape is changing, and we are here to be a part of it. This doesn't happen if the Army doesn't come up with X-Tech Search, or they don't come up with the Applied Cyber program, or the Army Applications Lab doesn't get stood up and move themselves into a capital factory in Austin. This is deliberate efforts by the government. DoD created the National Security Innovation Network. They are making deliberate moves to engage with the population. So you go back 10 years, that is definitely not the case. It's definitely who you know and how you can maneuver through everything. It took 10 years for them to say, okay, let's cut some of the bureaucracy, but hey, let's go out and actually engage, and let's put some budget towards getting some early stage companies in and seeing if, the ultimate goal is, hey, can we get technology and or solutions into the hands of the warfighter? So the quicker we can do that, the better. So I don't want to give FedTech the credit. I just want to say that the landscape has changed, which has allowed an organization like FedTech to come in and be facilitators.
It's more about timing then. Huh?
It is. 10 years ago, we don't have anything to do. So.
I often hear about defense leaders and companies, even in this process of the technology development and innovation cycle, talking about commercialization, and typically that's a goal that's described as the ultimate goal or how success is happening. I noticed that the definition of commercialization kind of it typically changes quite a bit though. And the actual number of companies that will get to that point is not always incredibly high. How would you define commercialization?
Well, you have to look at it through the lens of, hey, can I take this raw technology, this deep technology, and form it into some sort of use case to where I could sell a service and or a product. And I think that's where the government benefits by creating these programs that then engage with the startup community, within the populace. Because obviously, it isn't about the broad idea, but it's always about, hey, I figured out how to solve a problem. Will you pay for it? So I've been super intrigued by, number one, the government and say even DOD's willingness to deal with folks who, okay, we'll take the technology, but we want to create something that has nothing to do with defense. DOD has openly said, hey, we just hope that you can take it out into the commercial space, grow it, and then eventually it could be an asset that can be used for the warfighter down the road. So to not only, it's amazing that they are engaging with the now, which is, you throw a rock, you hit a startup program within a college or whatever city you're in, but also thinking long term, hey, this product can grow. It's not going to grow in our labs, but it can grow out there in the commercial space and then swing back around and be of use to us down the road.
That's a revolutionary concept, coming back and helping you down the road in the defense market.
Right, right.
What are some of the challenges that some of these companies that you're working with are facing?
So again, kind of, let's say going upstream and coming downstream. Let's go upstream with the companies that are trying to engage with the military, or just defense period. Because things are changing, the playbook has changed. So I see a lot of folks being frustrated now because, in the military, everything's written. Like, if you want to go from E2 to E3, this is what you have to do. So no different with, the acquisitions process. Hey, there's a specific method to get these things done. But now with, say, Army Applied Cyber, X-Tech Search, Open Topics, AFWorks, SoftWorks, the game is not predictable anymore. So, and all of these organizations are really new and trying to figure it out. So I think there's a few pain points because it's like, hey, it's not written, why didn't I get chosen, or what's next? I got this phase 1 cyber. Now what do I do? So I feel like we're in a gray area, which is really applicable to the startup space. We don't know what's around that corner. And I think it's cool that the government has jumped into that, because now we're trying to solve problems on both sides. In particular, working with Army Applied Cyber, working with companies who, okay, they won their award, but okay, we don't really want to get started until we get the money in the bank. Well, hey, you're on government time at this point. We'll keep trying, but what I explained to our government partner is, hey, in the VC space, it's kind of the same deal. Like, hey, when is the check going to go through? Oh, well, we're doing due diligence, we're doing background checks. The banks are talking. So, I think the same problems you see on both sides, they're still there. But you add government to it, and then there's bureaucracy and waiting. And of course, I don't think that's ever going to change.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was just reading an article just yesterday, actually, about the difference between success of venture-backed or SBIR-backed startups, solely venture or solely SBIR. Mm-hmm. And it found that across 3 agencies, Navy, Air Force, and the National Cancer Institute, the rate of successful phase 3s was about 26%. And that's right in the ballpark of success rates of like venture-backed firms, which is like 25 to 30%, right?
Well, I think it comes back to the fundamentals of, what drives an early stage business. It's capital, right? So that kind of leads to another problem that we see in the defense side of the house is, hey, if you're an early stage company and this is the route you want to go, defense, now your value of death has like doubled. It's waiting until that next tranche of funding can come through from whether it's phase two, phase three. So I think it's in keeping with the fundamental of, hey, startups need to be capitalized.
Exactly.
So yeah, the more capital, the more chance of success for sure.
And so, I mean, you're with FedTech, you're bringing the best of venture and non-dilutive, funding in SBIR realms. How are some of the success rates of FedTech looking?
So I'm going to say this: there's a collision going on right now. It's like two trains coming down the track, smacking into each other. I ran a studio program last year, brought in 66 entrepreneurs. And if you operate in any sort of entrepreneurship ecosystem anywhere in the country, you know that it has grown and advanced quite a bit over, say, the last 5 years. And especially those that survived COVID. I mean, wow, survivors, right? These are strong companies. So what we are seeing is very strong entrepreneurs coming into this space and pushing the limits. So imagine this. I brought in 66 strangers last year, created 22 teams, paired them with technologies from Department of Defense labs. One of those has signed an exclusive licensing agreement with Army Research Lab. Another one has received venture funding. And they were just companies on paper last September. So it's amazing what the entrepreneurship space is doing and how they are impacting, what Department of Defense and other government agencies are trying to do. So again, amazing timing on both sides where, okay, we want this hungry startup ecosystem to come in and disrupt. And at the same time, hey, it doesn't have to be defense related. You can take it into the commercial space. And so what you're seeing is you have folks that opt into defense who want to go down the SBIR, STTR trail, but then you have others, which again I was surprised by. There's check writers out there for whatever is before pre-seed. There are people that are investing in deep tech, which is new. So again, just the timing is right now.
Mike, you've said it a few times. I'm going to ask you, can you just define deep tech?
So, and I'm glad you brought that up because it reminds me of a time where I was sitting with some influencers in esports, and I threw that question out. Hey, what is esports? And I got like five different answers. But I think what can be consistent across the board is deep tech is technology that has been highly researched. That there's IP protection behind it. So even with the technologies that we bring into, say, our studio programs, there's IP protection there. There's a technology readiness level, whether it's 3, 4, all the way up to 8 or 9. So there's diligence that has gone in, and there's structures out there that designate this as, hey, this has been researched, this has been validated, and that's what I call deep tech. So you're not just kind of like sitting in a room and coming up with, oh, I've got this kind of blockchain solution that can do X, Y, and Z. Okay, is it patented? Is there any sort of protection? So that's what my version of deep tech is.
Awesome. I love that. So, what's next for FedTech? What's 2022 looking at?
We've got a big year ahead of us. If anyone has been on our LinkedIn, we've got like 4 or 5 jobs that we're hiring for right now. We've got 4 business units and actually a 5th one that's emerging as well. So we've got our accelerators where we're working with U.S. Army and we're creating programs for early stage companies to engage with our clients, whether it be U.S. Army. We have corporate venture section where we work with corporate entities that are looking for solutions to solve the problems that they have found internally and or externally. And no surprise, they are interested in deep tech to solve their solutions, whether that's material science and or human performance, or hey, we're trying to solve a problem with skin. It's like, hey, what's going on in Department of Defense labs that are dealing with that? So, corporates are interested in deep tech. Our third business unit is the studios, which I mentioned quite a bit. We're doing another big studio with National Security Innovation Network. We're also doing one with the Department of Homeland Security, and we also have one coming out with Department of Energy. So, super busy year coming ahead of us. And then last is internal innovation, where we actually go into some government agencies and work on entrepreneurship. We work with inventors who, okay, I want something a little bit different than, sitting in this lab and, cranking out IP and then moving on to the next project. Hey, can I do some customer discovery? Can I figure out if there's a way to commercialize this? And do I have options to leave this lab and become a startup founder? And of course, the answer is yes. And so, what you'll take from that, Chelsea, is that what you see out here in what I call the civilian space, again, throw a rock, hit entrepreneurship program, that is slowly working its way over to that behemoth that is, defense, Department of Defense. And now you're starting to see inventors in these labs want to be more entrepreneurial. So, we are at the front of all of that. And so I just feel super blessed. And I feel like, again, the timing is perfect for us to do all this.
Out of curiosity, how long are your programs typically? The startup labs and the
Oh,
accelerators.
gosh.
I'm sure that
The last studio I ran was a year long. It took us a few months to kick it off, and I want to say we kicked it off around May, and understand that we're the process of recruiting technology out of a defense lab is pretty intense. Where the list of technologies is open to the public, so everyone can see it. But then it's our relationships to actually go in there and speak to the inventor and say, hey, here's our program. Can we get an hour or two of your time every week to work with three strangers who are going to try to figure out some sort of use case for the baby that you created, right? So yeah, we'll spend about 3 months ramping up, recruiting entrepreneurs, recruiting coaches, recruiting mentors, putting the programming together, and it's literally a 6-month program. And really, we need that time to figure out use cases. And then also, hey, do you want to form a company? And if the answer is yes, then that's the second half of the program where we help you do that. Is it LLC? Is it S Corp? Is it C Corp? What is it that we want to do? Flip over to the accelerator side where we work with, Army Applied Cyber. We work with applicants all the way down the stream. So if you applied to, say, X Tech Search or Army Applied Cyber, and let's say you made it to the final round, you're eligible to work with us. And we'll start working with you then, even before you get an award. And then if you do get an award, then okay, now you can go into one of our accelerator cohorts. And again, that goes over the full span of a year too. You'll see some shorter programming, say with the internal innovation side of the house, where we'll go into Army Research Lab and work with researchers. Typically, we'll do 3 or 4 months there, where we'll go every other week. They're super busy. They have higher missions that, we don't want to disrupt. But hey, let's take an hour of your time every couple of weeks and let's talk about customer discovery. Let's talk about putting a pitch deck together. Let's have you pitch in front of your peers, which could be super scary, but let's try it and see what happens. And so far, they've been super excited about it because, of course, we're taking them outside of their comfort zone, outside of their box, and having them do some things that otherwise they might not be doing.
if I'm a young entrepreneur, where do I start with FedTech?
Gosh, go to the website and you're going to be bombarded with options, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I think the cool part is, so of course, starting with the studios, we really take the risk out of number one, getting into deep tech, number two, working with the defense department, and number three, starting your own business. You don't pay anything. We don't take equity. This is all on the government's dime. And, you know, really, we're just running folks through the very basics of, you know, number one, customer discovery, finding a use case. But then it's like, okay, I like this. I want to form a company so that I can license this technology to this company and I can run with this use case. Okay, what does it mean to create an LLC? What are the roles going to be? Who's the CEO? Who's the COO? Do you have the background to even license the technology? Because ultimately it's a negotiation too, where now you have to go to the lab and say, I have the skill set and the ability to take this technology that might be TRL level 4 or 5 and take it to the next level, and here's how I'm going to do it. So not a guarantee that you get the technology license, but you know, we try to facilitate that process all the way through. So for those that, you know, have it in the back of their mind that they want to be startup founders, I say come give us a shot to get you there, just because it's so low risk. Again, walk away whenever you want, and ultimately you walk away with a company on paper, because as you know, Chelsea, that's where the real work starts. Okay, you formed, now what? I need some capital. I need to go figure out how to sell something. So we get you to the water, but after that, you got to swim.
That's awesome. Well, how do you get a hold of you, and how do you get a hold of FedTech?
Yeah, so pretty active on LinkedIn. My email, michael.bynum, B-Y-N-U-M, @fedtech.io. I'm super available. I'll meet with and talk with anyone. Startup founder, aspiring startup founder. You know, I'm all about getting more people into this space. And then, of course, you know, what better way to start a business, to create a startup, than with a piece of technology that's deep technology, protected technology. So I think there's a ton of value there, and the more I can help people, the better, just because that's what it's all about. Again, we don't take equity, so it's not like we're banking for some unicorn to pop out of there. But being a former warfighter myself, it is important to me because I've been on the other side, and I've had innovation come in and, now I won't say save my life, but make my life a little bit easier. And sometimes that's all that matters.
Well, you are absolutely right. You're making the lives of hundreds of entrepreneurs easier every day, Mike, I gotta say.
Trying.
You're giving yourself not enough credit.
Well, I appreciate that.
Well, hey, thank you so much for this conversation today. It's been terrific. I really appreciate it.
No, this is fun. Let's do it again sometime, and no, let's keep moving.